So we've talked a lot about the mainland of Southeast Asia, but let's talk about insular Southeast Asia, some of the island countries here. Okay? And we are only going to talk in detail about the island of Borneo when we're talking just about the names of the islands. But I did want to call your attention to the fact that we have some very famous islands in this area. There have been remains of early humans found in Sumatra. You may be familiar with Java Man, right? There were people in Java. Those are two of the most important islands in Indonesia. The majority of Indonesia's population is found here on the island of Java. In fact, the capital is right here, Jakarta. This is where the Krakatoa volcano is. That's the volcano that was heard halfway around the world in the Caribbean and recorded the day that it exploded. It was just a massive eruption. We'll talk about, like I said, the island of Borneo here. This is the island of Sulawesi, which is just fun to say. And I think it looks like a person with like their hair streaming behind them. So there's the island of Sulawesi. Here's Komodo. Komodo is right in here. That's where the Komodo dragon is. We talked about the uniqueness of Bali for just a minute. And then we also have an island here that is split politically and culturally to some degree, because the western side is here, it's part of Indonesia, and then the eastern part of the island of New Guinea is part of a country called Papua New Guinea, and it is included in Oceania. So we have a lot of divisions and splits here. Let's talk about Indonesia the first, right? It's the Indonesia first. There we go. It's huge. We talked about the fact that it's very extensive. It covers the most territory. There are more than 13,000 islands here. Now, this is a fragmented country, which brings its own challenges geopolitically and politically, economically, as you're trying to unite all of these different groups and different interests while the land is actually physically separated. And you can see that in the fact that there are some conflicts in this area. East Timor, which is right here on the island of Timor, it is now an independent country. It broke off from Indonesia just a few years ago, I think 2014. It is one of the youngest countries in the entire world. There's also a separatist group here on the very northern tip of the island of Sumatra in a place called Aceh. And this is actually where the tsunami was in 2004. That was so huge. There was a huge earthquake there, but this is an area that would really like to split off and be independent as well. So there's a lot of geopolitical and political implications of this fragmented reality that they have, being this massive archipelago. And some of those islands are not inhabited, but many of them are. And as we know, this is the largest Muslim population in the world. There are 200 million people over that now in Indonesia. So this is a sizable population. This area was colonized by the Dutch. They were here for spices, and they controlled this area for a very long time. This is the area that Columbus was trying to get to be able to get that foothold into the trade. This is the Indies. This is what he was looking for. And this continues to be a place where many of our spices come from. And so that continues to be an important economic activity in this area. We talked about Bali, this part being Hindu, the rest of it being Muslim, right? So, let's see, what's next? Oh, Brunei. Yes. Okay. So Brunei is here on this large island, the island of Borneo, and it's a very small country. It actually has two pieces. So there's actually an exclave here, and it is completely surrounded. Both pieces are completely surrounded by the country of Malaysia. So that is the country of Brunei. It is small and it is very oil rich. Their territorial waters happen to have a lot of petroleum under the ocean floor there. In fact, 90% of the economy is based on petroleum and oil and that industry. This country is ruled by a sultan, which is another name for a king, also a prime minister. It's the same person. This is an absolute monarchy, and he has a bunch of emergency powers that he's had for quite a long time, and so there's some not very free aspects of this country. It has been ruled by the same family for more than 600 years. So this is long-term power. This area was actually colonized by the British, And they only gained their official independence in 1984. So that's an interesting bit of that. And this sultan is one of the richest men in the world. You may have heard about famous actors and musicians going to perform for sultans. This is one of the places that happened. Michael Jackson used to go here all the time. Beyonce and Jay-Z have performed here. All sorts of very famous people come and perform for the sultan, like for his birthday or for important days. There are some interesting contrasts, though. While the government is fairly authoritarian, at the same time, there's a lot of environmental focus, and they were the first Asian country to actually ban shark fin fishing, which is incredibly destructive to the shark population. Shark fin soup is considered a delicacy in large parts of this area of the world, and a lot of the shark gets wasted. People, catch the shark, cut the fins off, and then throw the rest into the water, and that obviously kills the shark, and it greatly reduces the population. And so people are trying to fight that and save the shark population. And they were the first Asian country to ban the practice of shark fin fishing. All right, next up, we have the Philippines. And this is another archipelago, obviously. There are about 7,000 islands here. And this is a country that stands out in terms of religion because we have a Catholic majority here. We also have Islam, especially down here in the south, which makes sense with its proximity to Indonesia. But the majority of the Philippines is Catholic. And of course, this is a result of colonization again. Here, the colonial force was the Spanish. Their current president, Duterte, is an interesting, an unusual leader. He talks about personally killing people, mostly drug dealers and criminals, and that's really one of his big focuses. That he wants to eliminate the drug problem and drug dealing by just killing anybody that's involved in the trade. And he has some pretty strong arm tactics that he's going under, and so there's some interesting geopolitical implications for that. So there are a lot of people from the Philippines that travel other places to find jobs. They are particularly famous for their excellence in healthcare, and a large number of nurses in many parts of the world are from the Philippines. So this is a really interesting place. And the United States actually controlled it for a while. After we won a war with Spain, we had control of the Philippines for a bit. And that is the same war where we gained Puerto Rico. And so that is one of the reasons that English is spoken so extensively in the Philippines. All right, what's next? Singapore. Okay, so Singapore is here at the very tip of the Malay Peninsula. It actually used to be part of Malaysia. And this is basically a city-state. It's basically just a really good port with a big city next to it. And trade and merchants have been coming here for a very, very long time. It's on the Strait of Malacca, that important trade route. And a large number of ethnic Chinese people from the southern part of China came here and established businesses. And so the ethnicity of the population of Singapore, a large, large percentage of it is ethnically Chinese. And that is significantly different than the rest of Malaysia. And when this area gained its independence from the British, there was a big cultural difference between the area that was ethnically Chinese and the areas that were ethnically Malay and other cultures in the area. But there was also a large economic difference, and most of the wealth and the wealthy people were actually in Singapore. And there was a lot of feeling that Singapore was getting all the attention and all the focus and all the development, and Malaysia actually asked them to leave. And so Singapore said, okay, and they split off, and now Singapore is its own independent country. And it really is just kind of one big island. It's not a very big island, but it's just one big city. Okay. Malaysia has an interesting colonization history because it was first colonized by the Portuguese, again looking for spices. Then the Dutch took over, and then the British took over. It is the only country that is found both in the mainland and in insular Southeast Asia. It is part of the Malay Peninsula. It's the southern part of the Malay Peninsula. So the two pieces are that peninsular part here that qualifies as part of the mainland, and then on the island of Borneo. Okay. And Malaysia is an incredibly diverse place, all sorts of different cultures, all sorts of different languages, and their economy is developing very quickly. But let's look more closely here at the island of Borneo. This is a pretty large island. It's one of the larger islands in the world. And as we've discussed, there are three countries here. So the island is called Borneo. But once again, we have the name of the island and then we have the name of the political units upon it. Okay. So the island of Borneo is divided politically. It has three different countries. There's the Indonesian part, there's the Malaysian part, and then there's Brunei. So make sure that you have all three of those countries marked down and that you know that that is the island of Borneo. And there are some very interesting pieces of this island. There is a lot of tropical rainforest here. We have a lot of tropical hardwoods, and we also have some species that are now found only on the island of Borneo. So deforestation is unfortunately a large issue here. Here's what the island looked like in 1950. This is what it looks like now. We've lost a huge amount of the rainforest, and a lot of that rainforest is being burned and being cut down. In fact, air pollution is a huge problem in this part of the world, in Malaysia and in Indonesia, where an awful lot of the clearing is going on through burning the forest. So there is logging for export, and unfortunately, illegal cutting has been widespread, though the government is cutting down on that. Sorry, that pun was not was not deliberate, but they are trying to really crack down on illegal cutting. Okay. And this has taken a little bit longer than I thought, so I'm going to stop here, and then we'll come back and finish up the last bit.